The sacrifice of Rudyard Kipling. Beyond the hills of Alsace bears witness to the truth, and Alsace hath told the men of Guruk. Thence the tale comes westward o'er the peaks to India. The story of Besessa, Armad's child, a maiden plighted to the chief in war, the man of 60 spears, who held the pass that leads to Tibet, but today is gone to seek his comfort of the god called but the Silent, showing how the sickness ceased because of her who died to save the tribe. Taman is one and greater than us all. Taman is one and greater than all gods. Taman is two in one and rides the sky, curved like a stallion's croup, from dusk to dawn, and drums upon it with his heels, whereby spread the neighing thunder in the hills. This is Taman, the god of all Urheb, who was before all gods, and made all gods, and presently will break the gods he made, and step upon the earth to govern men who give him milk dry use and cheat his priests, or leave his shrine unlighted as Urheb left it unlighted and forgot Taman, when all the valley followed after Kish and Nabosh, little gods but very wise, and from the sky Taman beheld their sin. He sent the sickness out upon the hills, the red horse sickness with the iron hooves, to turn the valley to Taman again. And the red horse snuffed thrice into the wind, the naked wind that had no fear of him. And the red horse stamped thrice upon the snow, the naked snow that had no fear of him. And the red horse went out across the rocks, the ringing rocks that had no fear of him. And downward, where the lean birch meets the snow, and downward, where the grey pine meets the birch, and downward, where the dwarf oak meets the pine, till at his feet our cup-like pastures lay. That night, the slow mist of the evening dropped as a cloth upon a dead man's face, and weltered in the valley, bluish white like water very silent, spread abroad, like water very silent, from the shrine unlighted of Taman to where the stream is dammed to fill our cattle troughs, sent up white waves that rocked and heaved and then were still, till all the valley glittered like a marsh, beneath the moonlight, filled with sluggish mist knee-deep, so that men waded as they walked. That night, the red horse grazed above the dam, beyond the cattle troughs. Men heard him feed, and those that heard him sickened where they lay. Thus came the sickness to Urheb, and slew 10 men, strong men, and of the women 4. And the red horse went hillward with the dawn, but near the cattle troughs his hoof prints lay. That night, the slow mist of the evening dropped as a cloth upon the dead, but rose a little higher, to a young girl's height, till all the valley glittered like a lake, beneath the moonlight, filled with sluggish mist. That night, the red horse grazed beyond the dam, a stone's throw from the troughs. Men heard him feed, and those that heard him sickened where they lay. Thus came the sickness to Urheb, and slew of men a score, and of the women 8, and of the children 2. Because the road to Guruk was a road of enemies, and Alsace was blocked with early snow, we could not flee from out the valley. Death smote at us in a slaughter pen, and Kish was mute as Yabosh, though the goats were slain. And the red horse grazed nightly by the stream, and later, outward, towards the unlighted shrine, and those that heard him sickened where they lay. Then said Besessa to the priests at dusk, when the white mist rose up breast high, and choked the voices in the houses of the dead, Amperson quo. Yabosh and Kish avail not. If the horse reach the unlighted shrine we surely die. Ye have forgotten of all gods the chief, Taman. Amperson quo. He rolled the thunder through the hills and Yabosh shook upon his pedestal. Amperson quo. Ye have forgotten of all gods the chief too long. Amperson quo. And all were dumb save one, who cried on Yabosh with the sapphire twixt his knees, but found no answer in the smoky roof, and, being smitten of the sickness, died before the altar of the sapphire shrine. Then said Besessa, Amperson quo. I am near to death, and have the wisdom of the grave for gift to bear me on the path my feet must tread. If there be wealth on earth, then I am rich, for Ahmad is the first of all Urheb. If there be beauty on the earth, Amperson quo. Her eyes dropped for a moment to the temple floor, Amperson quo. Ye know that I am fair. If there be love, ye know that love is mine. Amperson quo. The chief in war, the man of 60 spears, broke from the press, and would have clasped her, but the priests withstood, saying, Amperson quo. She has a message from Taman. Amperson quo. Then said Besessa, Ampersand quo. By my wealth and love and beauty, I am chosen of the god Taman. Ampersand quo. He rolled the thunder through the hills and Kaish fell forward on the mountain of skulls. In darkness, and before our priests, the maid between the altars cast her bracelets down, therewith the heavy earrings Armad made, when he was young, out of the water gold of Garuk through the breastplate thick with jade upon the turquoise anklets put aside the bands of silver on her brow and neck. And as the trinkets tinkled on the stones, the thunder of Taman lowed like a bowl. Then said Besessa, stretching out her hands, as one in darkness fearing devils, Ampersand quo. Help. O priests, I am a woman very weak, and who am I to know the will of gods? Taman hath called me, whither shall I go? Ampersand quo. The chief in war, the man of 60 spears, howled in his torment, fettered by the priests, but dared not come to her to drag her forth, and dared not lift his spear against the priests. Then all men wept. There was a priest of Kaish bent with 100 winters, hairless, blind, and taloned as the great snow eagle is. His seat was nearest to the altar fires, and he was counted dumb among the priests. But, whether Kaish decreed, or from Taman the impotent tongue found utterance, we know as little as the bats beneath the eaves. He cried so that they heard who stood without, Ampersand quo. To the unlighted shrine. Ampersand quo. And crept aside into the shadow of his fallen god and whimpered, and Besessa went her way. That night, the slow mists of the evening dropped as a cloth upon the dead, and rose above the roofs, and by the unlighted shrine lay as the slimy water of the troughs when murmuring thence the cattle of Erheb, and through the mist men heard the red horse feed. In Armad's house they burned Besessa's dower, and killed her black bull tower, and broke her wheel, and loosed her hair, as for the marriage feast, with cries more loud than mourning for the dead. Across the fields, from Armad's dwelling place, we heard Besessa weeping where she passed to seek the unlighted shrine. The red horse neighed and followed her, and on the river mint his hoofs struck dead and heavy in our ears. Out of the mists of evening, as the star of Alsafe climbs through the black snow blurt to show the pass is clear, Besessa stepped upon the great grey slope of mortised stone, the causeway of Taman. The red horse neighed behind her to the unlighted shrine, then fled north to the mountain where his stable lies. They know who dared the anger of Taman, and watched that night above the clinging mists, far up the hill, Besessa's passing in. She set her hand upon the carven door, fouled by a myriad bats, and black with time, whereon is graved the glory of Taman in letters older than the Alsafe. And twice she turned aside and twice she wept, cast down upon the threshold, clamoring for him she loved, the man of 60 spears, and for her father. And the black bull tower, hers and her pride. Yea, twice she turned away before the awful darkness of the door, and the great horror of the wall of man, where man is made the plaything of Taman, an eyeless face that waits above and laughs. But the third time she cried and put her palms against the hewn stone leaves, and prayed Taman to spare Erheb and take her life for price. They know who watched. The doors were rent apart and closed upon Besessa, and the rain broke like a flood across the valley, washed the mist away. But louder than the rain the thunder of Taman filled men with fear. Some say that from the unlighted shrine she cried for succor, very pitifully, thrice, and others that she sang and had no fear. And some that there was neither song nor cry, but only thunder and the lashing rain. Howbeit, in the morning men rose up, perplexed with horror, crowding to the shrine. And when Erheb was gathered at the doors the priests made lamentation and passed into a strange temple and a god they feared but knew not. From the crevices the grass had thrust the altar slabs apart, the walls were grey with stains unclean, the roof beams swelled with many-colored growth of rotinus, and lichen veiled the image of Taman in leprosy. The basin of the blood above the altar held the morning sun, a winking ruby on its heart. Below, face hid in hands, the maid Besessa lay. Erheb beyond the hills of Alsafe bears witness to the truth, and Alsafe hath told the men of Guruk. Thence the tale comes westward o'er the peaks to India.